Hello and welcome to Retro Gaming Swede. My name is Oskar and today I'll be showing you 5 more must-have Sega Dreamcast games. These are some of the first games you should look into acquiring for Sega's awesome little grey box. I think I've gotten together a pretty diverse list this time around, and of course, all of these games are absolute classics. I normally try to limit myself to games with a pretty affordable price point in these videos, but for the Dreamcast that's pretty hard. There's only one game on this list that's not in the same price points as a newly released game. You can, however, get around this by getting the Japanese versions of the games and a boot disc. Don't forget the boot disc. But anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? Do you like arcade racing games? Do you fancy yourself a competent driver? Well, let's crush that dream, shall we? The first game is Sega Rally 2. Yeah, Sega Rally 2 is pretty much the pinnacle of old school arcade rally racing. It controls absolutely amazing and the difficulty is punishing. There's 2 main modes in this game. Arcade mode, where you race and try to beat the time on 4 stages to advance to the next 4. Then there's the 10-year mode. This is the main one-player mode where you try to get 3rd or better in 4 different stages at a time. Then it moves on to the next year and so it goes. In this mode you can also change different settings of your car, like adjust the brakes, suspension and tires. So the car behaves in a way that it's more suitable to your driving style. There's a ton of cars to choose from and they all feel a little bit different. All from classic cars to some of the modern rally beasts of the time. It's really fun to experiment with them to try to find the ideal car for you. The game also has a really great 2-player mode and so really fits into the Dreamcast library, and it's a great start game for your newly acquired Dreamcast, and it's really fun to battle it out with a friend. This is also the least expensive game on this list and is a game that every Dreamcast owner should have in their collection. Would you rather blow stuff up than just driving a car from checkpoint to checkpoint? Are thousands of bullets and explosions more your thing? Then the next game is right up your alley. Bangai-o! Now this game is a little special. The original game was released in very limited numbers on the Nintendo 64. The Dreamcast version is a little bit more fleshed out, with CD quality music and some added graphical flair. The game plays a lot similar to a twin-stick shooter, although you only have one stick. The controls feels a little bit off at the start, but you get used to it after a little while. You control your mech with the D-pad and shoot with the X and B buttons. Or you can shoot with the analog stick. But that means you can't fly with your left thumb. Yeah, as I said, it takes a while to get used to. Your objective is to blow up as much as you can and collect as much fruit as possible to fill your special attack meter. You have 2 different weapons to use, the homing gun and the ricochet gun. Both are good in their own right, the homing gun being best out in the open and the ricochet gun being amazing in more crowded areas. At the end of every level you'll meet a boss, and this is where you really need your homing attack's special attack. It's strong as all hell and can take out most of the bosses quite effectively. Then between levels you get a nice anime looking picture with the story. The game is a real shoot 'em up joy to play, and just like most of these, The game is hard as balls. Enemies keep barraging you with bullets and they seem to be coming from everywhere. But once you get used to the weird controls, this is a real must-have game for the Sega Dreamcast. You can't really talk about the Dreamcast without a nice fighting game. And boy, the next game is one of my all-time favorites. What happens when you combine the two best 2D fighting game makers ever? Well, this Capcom vs SNK Millennium Fight 2000, or just Capcom vs SNK if you get the non-Japanese version. This is an amazing looking fighting game that mixes the two companies' games in a really solid way. It uses the 4-button fighting style of the SNK games and has a seriously massive roster of fighters with 33 selectable fighters. Before selecting your fighters, you choose your groove, which changes what special meter you can use. The Capcom groove uses the special meter from the Street Fighter Alpha series, and the SNK groove uses the extra move from the King of Fighters 94 to 98. The Capcom characters are mostly from the Street Fighter series, with only Morrigan from the Darkstalker series sticking out. The SNK characters are mostly from the King of Fighters series, with just Raiden from the Fatal Fury series and Nakoruru from Samurai Warriors. This is sort of a bummer, seeing that both companies made a ton of different fighting games back in the day, but it makes up for it with pure fighting game magic. When you select your fighters, you'll notice that the fighters are sorted into different categories or ratios. The ratio determines how many characters you can use throughout the game and is determined by their relative strength. So, if you choose 1:2 character, you can select either a second /2 fighters or 2:1. So, if you want a great 2D fighting game that can be found pretty cheap if you go for the Japanese version, this is an amazingly good pick. Do you like B-movies? Do you love everything about less living people that want to eat your brain? Do you love horrible voice acting? Do you have the Dreamcast gun? Then you should get House of the Dead 2. Yeah, if you live in America and saw the release of this game, you might have been seriously disappointed. The Dreamcast gun was not released over in the US due to Sega being a bit cautious after the Columbine High School massacre. What a great plastic gun has to do with that, I don't know. Anyway, this is of course a light gun game and one of the best ever made. If you're a horror movie fan like me, you will absolutely adore this game. It has everything you want from a game of the genre.
James, I tried. Don't underestimate the enemy. James, take this.
Some of the worst voice acting in a game ever, some really nice looking monsters and some really fun action. There's a whole host of people to try to save, and some will give you some healing. Beware though, because if you accidentally hit them, you lose a life, and they will frequently run right in front of you. Some of the people will show you a different route to take, and if you shoot barrels and other containers, you can find bonuses that increases your score. This makes it really fun to replay the game because every playthrough has a chance to be different, or you'll find more treasure. My best advice when starting this game is to start on the easiest difficulty and try to get as far as you can. Once you've gotten a bit into the game, you can increase it, because this game requires some really quick reflexes. So, if you have the Dreamcast gun, this is the most important game for it. After all that insane action, it can be pretty nice to sit down with a slower game. Or maybe you just want to get more hours out of your playthroughs. So, if Japanese role-playing games are more your thing, you should try out Grandia II. In Grandia II, you control Ryudo. He works as sort of a mercenary called Geohound that ends up becoming the bodyguard of a songstress of the church. A job he initially doesn't really want to do, but his awesome sidekick, a bird called Sky, convinces him to do it. Of course, as usual, stuff happens and suddenly your job is to save the world from darkness and helps the songstress to get rid of a curse. It's very much JRPG standard fare, but the thing with this game is that the fighting system is absolutely amazing. At first glance, the system looks like every JRPG game ever, but it has a free movement turn-based system that is really fun to play around with. The monsters are generally very nicely designed and there's tons of treasure to find in the different areas. The game also has no random encounters, which is a really good touch for an early 2000 Japanese role-playing game. And it makes the game a lot more playable and means you can simply just ignore some of the fights if you're too hurt to fight. Yes, I know this was released on the PS2 later, but that version just doesn't feel as good as this. There is, however, a really good version of both the first and the second game on the Nintendo Switch and Steam. And of course, as always in these kinds of games, there are some really awesome, super special skills you can unlock down the road. So, that was 5 awesome games for the Sega Dreamcast. What do you think of my list? What games should I add for next time? Are any of these games your favorite games? Then tell me in the comments, and of course feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to. And don't forget to hit the bell to be instantly notified when I post new content. I am trying to upload something at least once a week, but lately I've been working a lot and studying at the same time, and it has taken a lot of my energy, so I guess I need to apologize for not uploading anything last week, but I think the studies will slow down a bit in the coming couple of weeks, so hopefully I will be back to more of a steady schedule. Anyway, that's all I have for you this time, so goodbye!